Welcome back then. All right, so it's a grocer that has certainly done a whole lot of moves, particularly over the last year or so. Things have been quite interesting, of course, considering how the retail trade industry has done, falling overall by 6.9%, but Shoprite managing, of course, to get itself out of any sort of situation in that regard. It is the retailer that has managed to gain 10.4% in half-year earnings in the interim period. Then liquor sales resuming, of course, in the latter part of some parts of that second half of the year. 2,300 stores across the continent selling off the last of its Kenya stores, perhaps waiting regulations and regulators to give the go-ahead with regards to its Nigeria stores as well. Is the African expansion over completely, is the question we should ask. Pieter Engelbrecht, the CEO at Shoprite. It's a good afternoon to you, sir. I pose that one to you then. Is the African expansion over as we know it for Shoprite?
Not at all. It's still very much part of our strategy, long-term vision, that we will retain a core set of profitable countries in the non-RSA segment.
Yeah, in doing so, are there... Apologies for that. In doing so then, are there strategic areas you're currently looking at to say to yourselves, this is where we'd like to go to? Are you actually doing that feasibility right now, or is it just a sense of awaiting economic conditions to perhaps get better?
Yes, currently the African continent is a tale of devaluing currencies. So at the moment it is position for us to consolidate, to make sure that we return back to profitability, which we have done in this last 6 months. So at the moment, it's for us to see some recovery on the continent in terms of economic growth and also stabilization of the exchange rates.
In sort of the crossover inflation to consumers has always been a key benchmark that retailers have sort of looked to you towards for as well. How did that figure do in this half-year period? And the plan sort of to try and ensure that as inflation begins to pick up, of course, as things hopefully get better, what will that pass-through be as well? And how much of that are you hoping to pass over to the consumer?
So two things there. This morning I did explain how we measure internal inflation. We measure that over a basket of 60,000 items. It's a weighted basket that takes into consideration the differences in buying patterns, which is different to Stats SA, who measures a static basket of 124 items. So our internal inflation is measured at 3.8%, whereas 4.3%, whereas Stats SA is at 4.9%. And then if we, interestingly enough, the first part of this year, meaning calendar year January and February, the internal inflation actually reduced to 3.8%.
Do you hope that figure sort of stays the same? I mean, of course it will be pushed through by economic conditions then as well. How much of an impact did that have on price increases at all during 2020 specifically, considering how depressed the economy was?
Well, the one thing that we must bear in mind is that we were in a state of a disaster, which means that we could not increase margins. So that helped curb the inflation. Of course, the bad news is that we all know that after Easter, the petrol price is going to go up by 1 rand, and that definitely has a direct impact on food inflation.
Yeah, that certainly is going to hurt things along. How much then, because you've considered a time of consolidation is what you've called this time then, Mr. Engelbrecht, what kind of happens then with your local operations? I mean, particularly in South Africa. Is there a sense of perhaps increasing, whether it be operations, increasing number of stores, or is this really just fully a time when you're taking stock of things, shoring up your reserves, and then hoping to push on perhaps a year or two from now?
Oh, we definitely are at full cylinders, all cylinders in this African operation. With the multi-brand strategy that we have, we cover the entire spectrum of the consumer in South Africa, from Shoprite, our core customer with USafe, and then the Checkers brand. Of course, the core Shoprite customer was affected more than your more affluent customer in the sense of unemployment during COVID, and also the depressed economy in a sense, means that our Shoprite brand have grown at 5.6%, but the Checkers brand has grown over 11%. And the best probably gauge of how we did the last 6 months is that we've now had 22 months of uninterrupted market share gains in excess of 1.3 billion rand.
Yeah, certainly some interesting numbers there. You've also managed to grow your market share, though, particularly over the last nearly 2 years, that is. What do you think has been the key reason for that, and your ultimate benefit out of being able to grow your market share despite COVID-19, despite a push by all other retailers, of course, to try and eat into your pie?
Certainly, COVID wasn't easy for anybody. One mustn't be under the illusion that we had some windfalls or benefits out of that. But over and above, what has assisted us is that we've bedded down our very large ERP, information technology system, that we implemented 4 years ago. It didn't come easy. It's now fully bedded down. It gives us very good benefits. And with the drive in that, and also in the Checkers brand, has assisted us greatly to improve on our market share. We're still opening stores. We are growing organically. We still have 39 stores to open to June. So pretty much all decks on hand. We're still opening 1 liquor store a week. So the momentum is pretty much at full go in the South African operation.
Yeah. Very finally then, 4,305 jobs that you've added just in the second half of the financial year. This is despite the pandemic happening. You continue to play a part in at least alleviating the unemployment scourge in the country as much as possible. Do you continue to try and do that as well moving on, considering, of course, as you said, you have a number of stores that still need to open going into June? Does that sort of progression hopefully continue to the end of the year?
Yes, definitely, and we pride ourselves on this, that we are assisting, creating jobs. Unemployment is our biggest threat in this country, so we're very proud that we could create. We're also a participant on the YES program, so we definitely, as a company, pride ourselves in creating jobs, and also during the whole COVID, have not been in a position where we had to retrench any people.
Yeah, that hopefully is, of course, the main aim, to ensure that, yes, we get the job creation, but certainly we don't lose anybody in the system either. Pieter Engelbrecht, thank you so much for the time. CEO of Shoprite Group there, joining us to unpack their earnings for the interim period then for December. Even putting out an interim dividend is the company, so things certainly faring slightly better on the retail front, and hopefully that continues to be the case. The African expansion isn't over, it's just on hold, and perhaps it's time for consolidation. That's according to the CEO. Well, that brings things to an end then here at the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. Thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. You're, of course, on the Market Sense portion of On Point. From me here at the JSE and the team, that's where the buck stops.